One of the biggest draws to any Haven game are all the unlocks, the mystery, the potential, the hidden gems you're about to uncover. And I would say most of the time, you're in for a real treat. But sometimes you're in for a potato. Just joking, trap mains. Put away your salad forks. Yes, you do big numbers. I've seen nearly all 12 of them. During an earlier episode of our Frosthaven podcast, which you should totally listen to by the way, because we say jokes, I mentioned I was looking to retire my drifter and needed our community to guide me towards choosing my next character. And they blessed me with the frosty grips of the Snowflake, aka the Snow Dancer. And all I can really say is, thank you? No, really, like actually, thank you. It's been a blast. I've run the Snowflake for just under 20 scenarios and have decided to throw together my quick thoughts on the cards and abilities and my personal playstyle of this incredibly flexible class. Now remember, this is not a guide. I feel a guide would depend on me playing all aspects of the class to its full potential, and there was simply a selection of cards I just A, did not choose, and B, just didn't bring to any scenarios. If you are looking for a guide though, there are threads and discussions out there via Reddit, the Frosthaven Outpost Discord, and also Rage Badger has put together a thorough guide in her channel. I'll provide a link in case you've missed it. This video is really a collection of my thoughts around a character that's incredibly fun to play. So I ran the Snow Dancer as more of a sub-DPS spec, aiming to supplement and aid our party, which at the time included the Meteor and the Trap classes, and kind of strived to get more effectiveness out of all of our kits. And let me just say, this combination of characters was rather busted. Oh, and if you missed the Drifter guide, I never released, I can summarize it for you in about 1.5 seconds. The Algox Snow Dancer is a medium health Ice and Wind specialist with a hand size of 11 cards. They can summon a bunch of cuddly critters, grant movement and attacks to allies, heal and buff allies, and play around forced movement and hazardous terrain. My Snow Dancer went into a playstyle that consisted of pumping out as much damage as I could, whilst aiding teammates with movement and the odd heal once or twice a scenario. Although that was mostly through the help of my attack modifier deck, which meant everyone gets healing, provided RNGesus allows this. So let's check out the cards, and I'll share my experiences with them and ultimately which cards I chose. Starting with the level 1 cards, we have Blizzard. Now I didn't take or use Blizzard. I can see why someone would take it at level 1 or 2 before you get some new toys, but ultimately it wasn't much of a priority for me. Yeah, Blizzard goes in the bin. I need a bin. Done. Blizzard. I missed. It's in there, pretend. Now, Chilling Impact is a staple I ran all the way through to the very end. There was an odd scenario here or there where I didn't need or want to take it, but that 1 damage for the force movement did start to add up over the course of a scenario. Being pure damage, this was also a handy way to tick over that last bit of lingering health when needed so we could deal with a heavy shielded enemy. Early days in your Snow Dancing career, it's probably not that effective, and I found that reliably having the ice element up often enough became slightly problematic as I got used to the new tempo of the Snow Dance. But it does start to pick up the more force movement cards you get, so Chilling Impact goes in the bag. I need a bag, I don't, we'll just go there. Cold Therapy is for all the good little helping Snow Dancers who want to really support their team by keeping those health bars full. It's consistent, element flexible, and makes a large difference over the length of any given scenario. It also works wonders for a reliable poison, wound, brittle, bane removal, which will be much appreciated. Supports, go ahead and take Cold Therapy unless, of course, you have a team where when you activate this persistent ability, the party consistently hounds you for some healing.
I need healing.
Despite them being on the other side of the room and out of range, and somehow this becomes a you problem. You may quickly regret your decision. The top of Cold Therapy is decent during the low levels for a 3 damage muddle attack, but I found it falls off fast. So for me personally, Cold Therapy, in the bin. Now Crossroads. This was my first card. The grant movement / attack is pretty cool to be used on pets or an ally to get them in position and throw an attack. And I was in love with the bottom because of how flexible it was to pull either a mate out of trouble or an enemy through hazardous terrain and a move 3 for yourself. Top ability card Real Estate became rather tight in my deck and it was competing with some absolute game changers. And I think I was in love with the bottom more, but either way, this was my flex card. There were times I'd bring it and other times it stayed at home. So yeah, crosswinds, it's a weird flex. I need a flex. Bag, flex spot, bin. Gotcha. Enticing Breeze gets a lot of love from quite a few people in the Snowflake community. But I reckon I've taken it on like 2 to 3 scenarios and it's since disappeared. I can see this being really useful to move a priority target over to either your tank or melee DPS so they don't have to use a move bottom ability and of course over a negative hex. Oh, and this bottom ability always forces me to do a double take because of the 10 AoE hexes, but then I remember that there's no attack with it and it takes up a move. What an enticing tease. Enticing Breeze in the bin. So we finally get our first hazardous terrain generator in Frigid Growth. What's really great, and I think underappreciated about this Haz creator, is that you can create it from range 3. Now this wasn't something I thought about much at the start, but after noticing that some of the newer Haz making cards create hazards that were adjacent to us, it kind of meant that this card surprisingly did hold a spot as a flex card, especially once the Meteor went bye-bye, and we start relying on hazard manifestation ourselves. Again, it's not a must bring, but there are scenarios where I found this card useful. The bottom was the main reason I brought this a lot in the lower levels because it's an easy ice generator and does include a handy little jump. Frigid Growth, it's a flex. Oh, Gathering Force. You know it's always exciting to see every class's loot card? You know they're going to be relatively crap to make you weigh up if it deserves a card slot or not. And this is rather crap. Now the top of it allows for consistent element creation, which I did use in the first 2 scenarios, which gave me healing on demand through cold therapy, which was nice, and at the cost of nerfing my push-pull range, but when I transitioned away from supporting and more into doing my own thing, and had more reliable element generation, it was no longer needed. And I do need to talk about that bottom. Loot 1, attacks on you gain disadvantage for this round, hot garbage. Unless you plan to heal with cold therapy, or don't intend to take on a push and pull strategy, and instead want a nuke, well, gently place your Gathering Force in the bin. Punty McPunterson, aka Lifting Gusts, one of my favourite cards and one I used all the way to level 9. That range 3 push 4 was so lovely to move a pesky mob out of range, or send it over multiple negative hexes so it can sit in a corner of the room and think about its life choices while you murder its mates. Oh, and it's easy XP, and a win generator. And the bottom of Lifting Gust? Ha! Once you're at the tail end of a scenario, just go move 8 and snipe the chest, or simply fly or wherever you want to go. Or do what I did and book your slowpoke battle goal in the last round because you forgot all about it. Lifting Gust is 100% in the bag. Nature's Breath, our first little pet, and it's a fairly decent one of that. The little doggo fox thing has a move 3, attack 2, which really starts to help out with our initial lack of damage. Also, the built-in aggro manager was a nice little touch to assist with keeping it alive. I didn't use it at the start, but began to experiment using it after a listener said, I'd like to see Daddy use his doggo more. So I brought it along to scenario 45, got to witness our coral allow it to die before it even did anything, and as a result, refused to use it ever again. What? Okay, what's that look for? No, you grow up. Somehow I did still bring it for the reliable win generator on the bottom. Works the same as Frigid Growth, but yeah, it was easy to eventually replace with later cards. It does a great job in the solo scenario though, and I can see many people bringing it along, especially at lower player counts, which makes perfect sense. But other than that, doggo, bin. Now we get to one of my favorite level 1 cards. Snowball. The heal 2 regen and ice generator as a staple is lovely, especially on yourself, since most of your healing seems to somehow hit allies. And in my experience, this was one of only 2 heals that I would use to target myself. So it kinda only went on me. But the bottom is essentially a 10 damage loss card with 2 XP that you can spread around to different targets over time. This ability is super fun, especially when you time your hardest hitting abilities towards the end of Snowball. That being said, if you can get strengthened or find another way to get advantage before the final 2 charges, do it, as I have missed on that +4 often enough and it becomes super sad times. But Snowball totally goes in the bag. The red-headed stepchild of a card that is Whiteout. You know what's funny? I totally forgot about whiteout, and only because of preparations for this video am I looking at it through slightly different lenses. And look, I wanted to like whiteout. I just never used it. Yet looking at it now, it kind of looks great. Yes, it's a loss, but with that huge range and targeting 3, I can see a massive swing turn with this, and with Snowball, and if you throw in Chilling Impact, and some hazards around. Yeah, okay. But I think I just had other toys I'd rather use instead. I'm almost certain Pro Flakes use this, but for me, it just went, well, in the bin, but like crying in the bin. All right, let's talk about the 3 X cards where the spice increases. We'll start off with Blinding Vortex, a card with so much potential, but it's so reliant on saving those elements just for this moment. And of course, having someone pump out some light, only for the end result becoming a very situational AoE burn card, I don't know. This card always makes you think, maybe. But then, nah, it just doesn't justify the amount of resources needed to get it to work. Even if you combine the Ice and Wind to get off the extra damage and the push, you can't even combine it with Chilling Impact because you ate the ice already. There is a world where you line this up with a light source from either a Coral or Banner Spear, but then you want to maximize the AoE, which sometimes in this game is just hard. The move 3 jump, in my opinion, might be worth bringing early, but the initiative is super meh. Okay, let's be honest. Blinding Vortex, bin. The Spirit's Call holds our other early level attack, but this time with a Wind Consumer, making this a 3 attack range 3 curse with an XP, which is obviously fine at the start. The bottom is super situational and can come up clutch if used correctly, but yeah, it just seems way too niche. This card was a great card for the solo scenario, but for the most part, the Spirit's Call finds its way into the Amdirt Hall of Bins. Ooh, you see that? You see that? That 11 initiative on White Wings is almost all the justification this card needed to find its way into my hand. The bottom 2 heal was serviceable and got the job done, especially on myself, especially going this early, but the main purpose for this card was that brisk initiative that let me take advantage of whatever I set up the previous turn. The top must be hot garbage, right? Well, the Snow Snake, or Schneck, which is what we called it, can on average let you hit 3 or more things if you line it up properly. And with the Wind Kicker, 4 damage AoE with a push and the XP, such a great burn card, especially paired with Snowball. This card wasn't always with me, to be honest, but I'd say it came with me 70% of the time. I've got some fond memories of using this card, and White Winds totally belongs in our bag. Okay, let's get into the level 2 cards. It would be safe to assume all level up cards ended up in the bag, or at least flex, so we'll just put the bin aside. And by that I mean I'll leave it here because it's funny. At level 2, we have Birds in a Tempest and Tornado. And for me, it was a no-brainer. Birds trivialized so many, that's birds, yeah. Trivialized so many scenarios, it was just such an MVP. This has been the only card our whole group has the initiative tattooed to their brain. Now, if I wanted nothing but damage, Tornado all the way. But I wanted to give something to the boys, so we went Birds. And it's now inducted into the Amdirt Card Hall of Fame. First up, inductee. Congrats, Birds. Now, the top of Birds was only something I used a couple of times towards the end of a scenario for an XP gain, obviously. And of course, with the group's permission, because it no longer became my card, and there was a time or two I needed the actual Bird standees to soak a fairly big damage round from the monsters. They also went really huge in this Snowflake solo scenario due to being able to summon both standees. Now, Tornado actually looks like fun. It's got huge damage potential with Chilling Impact if you can fill those hexes. The bottom move 3 jump, push an ally or enemy wind generator is interesting, can assist with some potential movement issues. So it becomes rather flexible, albeit generally lackluster until you blow the top. I honestly believe this choice may come down to player count, as the more players you have and allies in general, Birds is just broken, especially on escort scenarios. But if you are playing as 2 players, the extra damage from Tornado really makes sense. At level 3, I took Cold Snap. And there was a point where I started to regret this decision. It's a weird situation to be in because at the time our Deathwalker was still Deathwalking and we didn't know what the media did, as no one picked it yet. In hindsight, I probably would have gone with the alternative, which was Polar Vortex, but it's hard to say because in hindsight's 2020 and it's not like characters are sitting around the bonfire discussing things like, hey Bill, are you retiring anytime soon? Know if any magma-related fellows are looking for a party? There's also a world where I go back and pick up Tornado, This is why I love this character, because the choices actually feel somewhat impactful. The Cold Snap Top mini burst was actually useful in some situations, and then we had the Meteor join the group and there became less of a need for me to create hazardous terrain, when said Meteor did it more efficiently and safer. At level 4 we get Biting Frost and Zephyr Barrier, and I went with Zephyr, which was in every deck I took until I hit around level 8-9, when there were just too many cards fighting for top position. The extra mini heal targeting too and double wards was amazing for teammates who like to face tank, and even created our meme, not a good ward target, which is to flag a player who wastes the ward on 1 or 2 damage. Sort it out. Now, the bottom of it is a great card to use at the end of a scenario because you get 2 experience. A 2 XP do nothing burn is great. Biting Frost with the potential 8 damage burn is pretty nuts, but fairly vanilla. The bottom having a move 4 on an initiative 16 is also really nice, not to forget enemies occupying hazardous terrain getting immobilized is pretty interesting. But for the second time, I decided to grab another support ability to stop the whining of my party. At level 5, I took Whipping Gale, and finally having a non-loss multi-target attack with a pull, this card was the bomb, especially with the Meteor. Combining this with Chilling Impact plus Snowball and some hazards made this card an absolute delight. It also generates an XP consistently, which is always appreciated. Whipping Gale also comes with a bottom that single-handedly helped me get one of my masteries, though it was the only time I ever used it for that ability. This becomes a tough choice for me, as Shifting Snow was also really good for me, especially the bottom ability. A move 3 that creates a hazard on a 17 initiative and makes ice. What eventually pushed me over the line was I figured Whipping Gale was going to help me with my solo scenario, but turns out the rune bonuses didn't work the way I thought they did, so it kinda blew up in my face. Still, I took Whipping Gale at level 5. Level 6 gave me one of the funniest cards I've ever seen. Frozen Brand. This thing looks ridiculous, and I considered taking it because of how crazy it looks. The only issue I had was, at this stage, we had our Coral who was enjoying their Retaliate tanking build, which with Frozen Brand kind of does sound amazing on paper, maybe, but in order to get a monster's positioned right, they would have to go first and probably melee the crab whilst probably taking fat Retaliate damage in return, and then its effectiveness isn't as cool. I mean, normally when they're surrounding the crab, they're pretty much dead anyway, or at least in our games they were, so yeah, it felt kind of overkill. Move 4 jump on the bottom is always welcome though, but is it enough? Refreshing Flurry. A heal plus potential move with a pet bottom, both things I didn't want to take. Using a top to heal as a main DPS Snowy wasn't part of the agenda, so I took the other level 5 we didn't get before. Hey, Shifting Snow, which gave us more hazardous creation, which we mentioned earlier, and I love the initiative and ice creation. Level 7 is where we get meaty. First starting with Freezing Storm, an attack 4, range 2, targeting all within range 2, with the Wind Kicker extending that range. I think sometimes I have a real issue getting any of these fat loss cards on most characters I play, because as soon as I saw the loss symbol, I'm like, eh. But then if it didn't have it, it would be fairly busted, so yeah. 2 move Ice Kicker, creating hazardous terrain in an adjacent hex and then pull 2, that's pretty cool, and a great way to get some bottom damage out. But this card didn't quite excite me enough, especially when it was going head to head with Stormwall. Now Stormwall, oh my god, the schlong. So Meteor had a card that looked somewhat similar, at least, I don't know, he would throw down a 4-hex AoE in a row that always looked cool. I then picked up Stormwall and always bragged that my schlong was bigger when we double flopped. More flexible as I got to cast it from range 2 and throw it in whatever direction I wanted. Combined with Chilling Impact, the push 2 and pierce as well, and Wind Kicker causing even more damage to subsidiary adjacent targets. And it's not a lost card. You just can't say no. I mean, I picked this up and never got rid of it. It was always amazing to hear the boys saying, Daddy Schlong? Yes, Daddy Schlong indeed. The bottom of Stormwall, I really barely looked at it. In fact, I had to recheck the card to remind myself of what it did. Pick an ally, and they get ward at the start of their turn. Possibly a good card on your frontliner to nail one of your masteries, but yeah, all this bottom ability said to me was, in the last couple of rounds of the scenario, gain 2 XP. Now, I hit level 8 and still had crap loads of my PQ to do, so I got plenty of use out of the level 8 card, Surging Blow. This card, along with Stormwall, became my staples for blowing up priority targets. The double 3 attack, push 2 on each, along with Chilling Impact, Strengthening Potion, Power Potion, and then some other item that I had, I can't remember, on the final 2 charges of Snowball, hilarious damage. For the longest time, I didn't even remember this card's bottom ability, because why would I? Like, why would I ever use it? Until, well, we encountered an escort quest where we ran out of ways to get the NPC to the finish line, and some idiot forgot to bring birds. So we were in a precarious position, and while going through my cards, I saw the bottom of Surging Blow. Heal 3 targeting 1 ally in range 3, push 3 and strengthen. What a nice surprise, and such a feel-good moment that won the scenario then and there. That was also the only time I've ever used the bottom of Surging Blow, and it was phenomenal. But as we say in Australia, yeah nah, use that top every damn time. Now the Endless White. The top action is an interesting ability. Reduce the range of all ranged attacks for the round, which while theoretically cool, seems annoying to use, and is incredibly niche, and it doesn't do damage. The bottom is a move 6 on an initiative 5. I mean, that's pretty insane. See, they always tempt you with these initiatives on questionable cards just to boost up that desirability. Nice try, Cephalofair. So did anyone actually hit 9 on their Snowflake? I did. And was stuck at 9 for quite a few scenarios. Lucky me, right? So what did we get? It was actually a very tough decision for me. Snowblind, with its range 3 attack 5 targeting 2 things adjacent to the same hazardous terrain whilst applying disarm, is bonkers. And it's not a burn card. It was kind of the obvious choice for my build. But there was a giant flaming caveat with this choice, as our Meteor just retired, and I got used to having hazardous terrain provided for me free of charge. And by this stage it meant I had to make my own again, meaning I had to do more work. For me, how selfish. This card though became so clutch toward the later scenarios, especially during my PQ quest chain. The bottom, every time anyone rests they get a bless, does make you think, but let's be honest, it was never really used. I mean, come on, finally having an ability that can disarm 2 targets. Everyone will love you. Now, Winds of Change with its attack 4, range 4, targeting 4, move all targets 2 is a fairly large attack, which can really change up the dynamic of a room. Again, combined with Snowball and Chilling Impact and hazardous terrain can make for a catastrophic turn. But again, that loss icon just hurts a little bit. The initiative is really nice as well though. The bottom, though, is where things get really interesting. Being able to let people exchange cards to retrieve lost cards out of their burn pile can be fairly game-changing, especially if it's a class-defining card. But this will rely on being a good support, and I was not a very good support. Well, that about wraps up the cards. I'm going to talk about just a couple of little memories. My favourite memories playing the Snowflake were punting things across the map, landing fat snowball procs on priority targets, playing with my snake, and eventually huge schlong. There became a real focus on the board state and solving the movement and placement puzzle, especially when the board became littered with hazardous terrain and traps, trying to work out push-pull targeting, how far we can move things, and kind of where everything will end up. What makes the Snowdancer shine though? Well, they're the master of consistency, having fairly consistent damage. Your damage at least initially comes in drips and drabs, but over the whole scenario, it can really start to add up. You're the master of putting down those low health monsters, when perhaps the other players don't want to commit their large attacks to them. Board manipulation. If the monsters are just not behaving and are staying at range, you are able to close that gap by either moving your teammates in so they don't have to use their bottom ability to move, or by pulling the monsters towards the party. You can really mix up the battlefield with all your grant and forced movements. Having medium health allows you to tank a few hits quite comfortably. For me, this didn't become an issue unless I burned away my healing cards, like the ones for me. It means I would be willing to take the smashing instead of, let's say, our teeny tiny little trap boy who cries for a heal whenever a wound on him ticks. And of course, Birds in a Tempest, probably one of the most recognized cards / abilities in the whole of Frosthaven. This card, whether I'd like to admit it or not, was so sought after by our whole group it made scenarios that felt borderline impossible, possible. If your Snowflake doesn't pick this card, it's because they hate you. Their level 2 decision will decide your level of friendship. But at times, snowflaking can be problematic. Here are a couple of things that I struggled with. Element generation. The Snowdancer element generation in the beginning can be a little rough, so don't be afraid to fix it with Gathering Force. I struggled initially being able to consistently have the elements I needed to get things going. This was fixed a little bit by Outgeminate before they departed, but yeah, although some of the later cards will help get that going. Flying units, especially those with shields, aka the normal ice wraiths, the forest imps, the flame demons. You'll struggle against these because they don't touch the ground. Monsters that don't have legs can't have burnt feet. I remember getting level after level of flying monsters over and over again, and it was an incredibly frustrating period of our campaign for both our media and myself. Push-pull distance measuring. This took me a while to get used to. Working out if every hex a creature was being pushed or pulled was indeed closer or further away. After a while I did get used to it, but there were rounds where while I was planning my 2 cards, I took a lot longer than I did when I was on my drifter, because I would be trying to make sure everything lined up properly, only to find that during execution I got something wrong, and it didn't go where I thought it would go. This sometimes can be a frustrating experience because you might have just selected your 2 cards, mathed everything out, only to realize you can't do that. And you go back to the drawing board. Finally, manipulating the battlefields without upsetting your team. This was probably my biggest issue while playing the Snowdancer. It's not a catastrophic issue, but there were times I wanted to punt something, or several things, to get some damage off, but that meant I was putting the monsters in positions that my team didn't want them in, which would lead to awkward conversations about which one to target and which hex to move them to. Now, this can be solved easily with communication, but when you have a frontliner who wants to be hit by the mobs and you move them further away, this may upset them. And I totally understand that. This can lead to awkward turns where your intentions to do something get changed and you end up potentially having a less efficient turn. Every group will differ, but these were just some of my experiences. So overall, the Snowdancer is the ultimate battlefield manipulator, and if spec'd properly, a supporting powerhouse who can really lift the team to new heights and chill the opposition. I think the Snowdancer is one of the most fun classes to play, as they are incredibly versatile and can get up to some insane shenanigans. I honestly love playing it, and I think it will forever be one of my favorite classes. So to all that suggested it to me, thank you so much again. Until then, I've been Deddy, this has been MDirt, and when it comes to rolling terror birds, it's all in the nest.